Why is it the right of the United States to have the cheapest gas of any developed economy in the world?
That's a trick question, which I can't answer. No. How should I do this delicately? I think it's right to say that we are not smart, not wise, not responsible, not sensibly in how we use energy as a country today. We're one of the largest consumers of the types of energy that are worse for the environment. It's something we should not tolerate and accept, and to change that is going to require a broad-based set of reforms to how we use energy, how it's priced, how expensive it is, the standards we force companies to run with. And as you know, the President was successful in winning congressional support for very substantial increases in renewables and some very important improvements in standards for example, gasoline standards, efficiency standards for cars, but he has not yet been successful in finding political support for the broader set of challenges for reforms in energy that we think are important. And he's going to keep working at that. But again, it's not something that he can do without a broader consensus of support from the business community. There's been a lot of support from the business community for very sensible reforms in this area. A lot of coalitions of some of the most energy-intensive industries out there supportive of reform, recognizing, I think, as your questioner implied, that we're not in a sustainable position. So we got some ways to go in that area. Investment in public infrastructure, in transportation, is a good investment. Now, our government doesn't do it, not perfect in how they do it. A lot of inefficiencies and a lot of politics in how those dollars are allocated, which is one reason why the President has proposed that we establish a infrastructure bank that can bring a more disciplined, much more selective approach to deciding what we finance. But it's a very good strategy near term. It's very good for growth, short term and long term, and it has the benefit of getting some of the people hardest hit by the recession, people in manufacturing, autos, or in construction, back to work more quickly. And I should say that, even though I've been in government all my life, and I work for a president that didn't come from the business community, he understands and we understand that the business of America is business, and the role of government is to help businesses create better incentives for them to create jobs, to innovate, to grow and expand. But as we've all learned, and you've seen in this crisis, that requires that the government be better at doing things only the government can do, like educating our children, like making sure our financial system does not leave us with huge risk, with huge collateral damage when you have a recession, that we're using energy more efficiently, that we find ways to make sure a broader range of our citizens have access to affordable health care. Those are things that governments have to do for market economies, for businesses to thrive, to function. And as you've seen, as a country, we have not been good enough at doing those things. We have to get better at it, and the world is getting better at it more quickly than we are now. And that should be a huge cause for action in Washington and in state and local governments around the country. It is very important for people to understand that the United States of America and no country around the world can devalue its way to prosperity, to competitiveness. It is not a viable, feasible strategy, and we will not engage in it. It is very important to us that people have confidence in our capacity to meet our long-term fiscal obligations, to make sure the Federal Reserve does its job of keeping inflation low and stable over time. And we recognize that the U.S. plays a particularly important special role in the international financial system because the dollar serves as the principal reserve asset of the global financial system. So we're going to work very hard to make sure that we preserve confidence in a strong dollar, and that we're working very hard to strengthen confidence in our capacity, in Washington's capacity to, as I said, repair the damage caused by this crisis and restore, as we recover, a sense of discipline, gravity, balance to our long-term fiscal position. Of course, the world's going through a very dramatic, very important set of changes in the basic balance of power of economic activity around the world. You know, most of the growth is going to come from the world's most populous, the rapidly growing emerging economies. That's going to be true for a long period of time. But I think largely, I think that can happen in a way that makes the U.S. stronger too, makes us stronger. And again, the most important thing we can do in the United States, again, is just keep working on trying to make sure we're improving our long-run growth prospects and restore a basic sense of discipline and balance to our long-term fiscal position.
How much do you feel that the Chinese currency is undervalued today?
Really important question. And the interesting question is not that, because by really almost any measure, and we use the independent arbiter of the IMF to tell us how to think about that judgment, it's significantly undervalued. More so than is true of any major significant emerging market currency. And it's not good for China long term, not tenable for China long term, and it's unfair to all of Chinese trading partners, Americans and others, because it just creates a playing field that's unbalanced. It provides a huge near-term, just short-term economic advantage to Chinese companies. And it's very damaging to what's very important for everybody, which is to the sense that we operate in a world where people play by a set of consistent rules of the game. I said it's not in China's interest either, and that's because China is a very large independent economy, and if you tie your currency to the dollar or to another country's currencies, then in effect you're letting that country run your monetary policy, run your macroeconomic policy, and that makes no sense for China because it's growing at roughly 4 times the rate of the American economy. So if China wants to have the independence to make sure it reduces the risk of future inflation or huge credit bubbles, it needs to be able to run a more flexible exchange rate and to soften that link to the dollar, which is what China is doing. There's a period between 05 and 08 where China allowed its currency to rise by about 20% against the dollar over that period of time. They stopped that process in the crisis because of the broader instability across the system. They thought a period of stability would be better for them, and I understood that judgment at the time. And now they started to let the currency move up again gradually. It's moved about 3% in the last couple of months. And we want to see that process continue.
And how far would you like to see it go?
Higher.
Almost as high as the waves at Steamer Lane.
There's you can't know with certainty now how far it should go. It's what you know now is it's significantly undervalued, which I think they acknowledge, and it's better for them, and of course, very important for us that it move. And it's going to continue to move.
Do you think a lot of the comments that are coming from different corners and politicians in Washington about China are really just using China as a scapegoat and an easy excuse to distract voters from really what needs to be fixed in the United States?
The Chinese certainly think that, and that undermines the basic force of our argument. So I'll tell you what my view on that question, which is that by far and away the most important thing that we can do about future job growth, future income, the basic economic security of working Americans are things that we control in the United States. They relate to, again, how good a job are we doing at educating our children, at repairing the damage caused by the financial crisis, at making sure we're strengthening competitiveness. We're creating stronger incentives for companies to invest in the United States. We're having the government invest in basic science, research and development on a much more substantial scale. Overwhelmingly, the things that determine our fate as a nation will depend on those choices we make here at home. But it's also very important, and it's reasonable for us to ask that American companies compete on a level playing field with our trading partners around the world, including in China. And that is the basic bargain we've all made with each other in this open trading system we've created. And so it is perfectly appropriate and legitimate for us to try to expect China to live by the basic rules that most of China's trading partners live by in this context. And we're going to continue to work very hard to try to make that compelling to them.